It's go time. Right now. Warriors, step it up on today's show.
Who cares now? Because I'm here. And I would like to think that I am wanted here.
Most importantly, he a dog.
We got 4 championships.
You are Locked On Warriors.
I know Jimmy drinks great wine.
Your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Speculation is just what it is, though.
Your team every day.
What is the good word, everyone? A little trial run to see how the live stream YouTube show around the lunchtime works, to see who's sneaking off from their cubicle into the bathroom, taking a little break in the car to listen to Locked On Warriors, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. You can find this show on YouTube, like we said, wherever you get your audio podcasts. If you're not subscribed to the show, make sure you do that. It'll pop your way. We're going to need everyone. It takes a village. We will need everyone for the live shows come playoff time. And that's the theme of today's show. Will there be an NBA playoffs? We're about to find out. Matt Kolsky, my guest on today's show, the solo host of the Locked On Warriors programming after, I wouldn't say their worst game of the year. I think Memphis may have been the worst game of our lifetimes at this point. That was brutal. But I would say, based on the pompous circumstances, that it was right up there with one of the worst games that we have seen from the Warriors this entire year, which is down to the final 10 games. Warriors now tied with the Clippers. No, the Clippers a half game up.
No, they're tied, but the Clippers have the tie break. So
they do. Errors and omissions. Let me step in real quick, because the last game I said two things that were stupid. One, I said that the Clippers, it's hard to beat a team 3 times, and the Clippers are going for their third. No, I had the flu the third game. That was that wall game at the Clippers that we were talking about at nonstop. And so the Warriors have already lost 3 games to the Clippers this season, but that could end up being for all the marbles. And then the other mistake I made is I mentioned that the Warriors and the Cavs, if they met up in the Eastern Conference Finals, obviously I meant the NBA championship. So I have to correct that. Thoughts?
Well, I mean, it's pretty clear down the stretch. Minnesota is a half game back in the loss column, but you do have the tiebreaker against them. So that's kind of 2 small edges over Minnesota. And frankly, the Clippers are probably playing better. And by the way, not for nothing, a truly fully healthy Clippers team is a potential wrecking ball in the playoffs.
Dark horse.
Almost anybody. I mean,
with a good pal.
Listen, the odds of Kawhi Leonard staying fully healthy for the time it would take may not be high. But if he does, I don't think you can rule them out of anything. They have a great coach. He's as good as anybody in the league if he really is himself. And, man, that's a whole interesting wrinkle to the playoffs. But as it pertains to the Warriors, assuming there's not some injury, they are playing excellent. They've won 9 of their last 11 games, the Clippers. And if you look at their schedule, as I have been doing for a couple weeks now because of the situation, but especially right now, 10 games left for both teams. And honestly, like, the Warriors' schedule is pretty easy, but it's not even worth looking at, because the real question is, what are they going to have to do to make sure they beat the Clippers? That means they have to be better than the Los Angeles Clippers from here on out. They play each other on the last night of the season. I think it goes without saying you're probably going to have to win that game, okay? But to still be tied going into that game, right?
You better beat New Orleans. That's where we're going to start.
I mean, no question, but here's who the Clippers have. Brooklyn, Cleveland, that's a tough one, at Cleveland on Sunday. Orlando, New Orleans, Dallas twice, Houston once, Sacramento, and then the Warriors. Like, other than Houston and Cleveland, that I think if you're a Clippers fan, you're thinking you win all those games, right? So, I think to go into that game against the Clippers, you cannot even possibly imagine going worse than 7-2 in the next 9 and being in a position to get that 6th seed. And that's tough, man. That's a lot of pressure every night, but especially against a team like New Orleans that you really should beat.
And you have some games down the stretch that may not be considered tough games on paper. A team like the Phoenix Suns that has handled you a couple times this season
And is playing better.
and is playing better. You have the Lakers who have destroyed you. You have the Nuggets still on the schedule. You have the Rockets who you've handled pretty good, and the Grizzlies who you've been all right against. But those are not two slouches. So, yeah, here's the good thing, man, is that the Warriors tend to play better basketball against better teams. They have this weird tendency, and it's not just this year. It's been the last few years of playing down to competition. And whether you want to call Miami lacking the talent to be a really good team, I will say this: they haven't won many games. Granted, the schedule was tough, but since Jimmy Butler has left, Miami statistically has been a pretty dreadful basketball team, and they just made you look like the Washington Generals.
Right. I mean, again, and I said this on the night, if you go in that game without Steph Curry and Jimmy plays well and you miss some open shots and you lose a tough one, it's easier to understand.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It's easier to understand than what we saw. And what we saw, to me, I think you're right, is I would say it's a bad habit that traces back to the best of the Warriors teams with Kevin Durant, when they would often mess around in the first half. It didn't matter. It truly did not matter for that team if they were down double digits at halftime. Since Kevin Durant left, it has mattered. It's not, you're right, it's not just this year. They have lost a lot of games in the first quarter over the last few seasons. And I know that sounds silly at a certain level, but you can see it in the second half. You saw it in Miami when they got within 8 and then kind of sputtered and ran out of steam. Well, they were coming from down 20. So, if they're coming from down 7, which wouldn't have been extraordinary against the Miami Heat team that, as you said, has been dreadful. If you're coming from down 7 instead of 20, then you're up 5 after that comeback, right? It's a huge, huge difference. And this team, particularly without Steph Curry, but honestly, even with Steph Curry, is really not good enough to continue to trick away first quarters, and especially when the starters are in. Like, it's not sustainable if they want to be a serious contender.
We get a message coming in. Why is the chat so dry? This is the first time we've done a little brunch time show. So the people don't know that the show's being funneled out there right now. Firepower is something we need to see from this team, man. 80, how many points was it against the Heat? 88? Is that the final tally that they had? Regardless, you say the number 80 next to the name Warriors in the year 2025, it makes you want to hurl. That's terrible, especially when you bring back Jonathan Kuminga, someone that is supposed to provide the firepower. You bring in Jimmy Butler, who in big games, not just playoff games, but big games, is supposed to be the guy that kind of puts you on his back. And you mentioned it after the last game. Jimmy didn't play bad. He was passive. He was conservative. He made the right basketball plays. There was nothing wrong with his game. But when no one else can make a shot and you need the more dogs, Jimmy Butler's supposed to be that player. And if he's not that player now, will he be in the playoffs? And will Jonathan Kuminga get back to that guy that could give you 30 points off the bench a few months ago? You're running out of time to find out. You don't find it out during the regular season, you're facing 2-game elimination,
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right.
You're running out of time.
If you're not careful, like, Minnesota's schedule is easy too, right? So you do have a couple advantages on them. 1 game in the loss column right now, and also the tiebreaker. But if you go 6-4 to finish the season, you're going to end up playing on the road in that first potential, elimination. I guess it wouldn't be an elimination game for them, but you end up playing on the road in the first play-in game because Minnesota's right on their butts and they're,
playing good ball.
Yeah. And none of these teams have really tough schedules. The reality of it is, like, over a 10-game stretch, most teams don't have a really tough schedule if they're good teams, like, because there aren't that many great teams. It's less than half the league, right? So anyway, the Warriors, I certainly felt, maybe no show is strong, But there was a lack of urgency, without a doubt, in the game in Miami. They have now spent 5 nights in Miami and play New Orleans. And like, this is not, there
I'm just
have
hoping,
been,
man, that it's like their spring break. That this is
okay, but there
they're
have been
professionals,
Warriors
but they're
teams.
humans.
There have been Warriors teams that have been able to afford having you get it. They spent 5 nights in Miami, sort of a night. And this is not one of them. You cannot afford that now. You need to be in the mindset of winning everything down the stretch if you really want to secure a legitimate playoff spot. And that's going to require not just Steph coming back and Jimmy playing well, but everybody's full attention at all times.
That's a conversation I want to continue on. Can the Warriors just turn it on and turn it off? Because that's what they've done many, many times throughout this dynasty. Turn it on, turn it off whenever they wanted. We saw it in 21-22. We have not seen it since. There's that little part of me that still believes, still has that blind faith. Do you, Matt Kolsky, have that blind faith? We're talking about it coming up.
And most importantly, he a dog.
We need more dogs.
Out your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track, and that is where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is not just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So stop managing your money and start building wealth. I realized when I started with Monarch Money how much I was spending on food deliveries and how much I was spending on subscriptions for TV platforms that I didn't watch, whatever it may be. Locked On Podcast Network. It's always free. You don't need TV subscriptions. This is our sports. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year rather. That's monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONNBA. You will get half off your first year. All right. Let's get back to the show and talk some Golden State Warriors.
Forget that. We champs. Why are you starting with that question? We got 4 championships.
All right. So we posed the question, can this year's Warriors team just kind of turn it on and off? And I've been asking this question for a long time now. It does feel a little bit like deja vu. All these seasons are starting to blend into one another. 21-22 was a championship squad. And even then, it somehow had some elements of this year, starting with the fact that year's team lost Steph Curry after they kind of picked it up after a hot start, like this year's Warriors team, sputtered. They can't win an NBA championship. Got it back together. Curry gets hurt. They struggle. Same time frame, too. I mean, from March 16th to March 30th, the Warriors lost 7 of 8. They were missing Curry with the foot injury at that time. They were losing to the likes of the Hawks, the Wizards, the Magic, and the Spurs. We were doing the 95.7 The Game text line shows together, and people were angry. Just like on the YouTube comments right now, they did not think the Warriors had what it took to get it done. But there was always that sense of, I think the Warriors can just kind of turn it on. But that was the Warriors unbeaten, right? Because you could always make an excuse. No Draymond against Cleveland for a game. You can make the excuse of all the injuries against Toronto. You can make the excuses of the play-in Warriors team doesn't have Klay Thompson. It's just not the same, right? Injuries, that played a big part in it. But when the Warriors were fully healthy, you had that scapegoat of basically saying this team is kings of the mountain until someone knocks them off. 22-23, I thought maybe similar. They beat the Kings. You hear all the sound bites coming in from Klay. You never doubt a champion. From Draymond. Don't be so quick to write the Warriors off. Everyone wants to move on to Luka and Ja and the next iteration, but the Warriors are still here. Then they got their asses beat against the Lakers. Next season, they don't even make the playoffs altogether. And right now, they are teetering on not making the playoffs altogether. You've seen sample sizes from this season that says that this is a team that can win a lot of games over significant competition. But consistency is a thing. And this team has lacked consistency almost all season long. They are not playing their best basketball at the current moment. The time is now, man. If they were to lose one of these games to San Antonio and New Orleans, is that officially press the panic button? Like this team just does not have what it takes to get it done. Like an NBA championship team in 2 must-win games against garbage teams would come out and show some fight and win these games. That's what I like to think.
I agree. I would say 2 things. Number one, it's I don't even know if panic is the right word, because I think if you are, and this is really the second thing, if your version of this Warrior team is like they should be a title favorite, then I think you're confused. I think, or you're Draymond Green. I think if you're looking at it from a perspective of this is a team that has suddenly, with the Jimmy Butler acquisition, a very interesting collection of talent that hasn't really had a chance to all play together and coalesce meaningfully yet. But if they do in a kind of remarkable way down the stretch, which we're in it now. So like, I feel like you've already let some of down the stretch slip away, but the next 10 games, if everybody's healthy and playing really well and it looks awesome, I won't doubt their ability to do anything. But to your point, if they fall on their faces in San Antonio, I think it's more, someone in the chat said it, not panic, but realization that they're not there yet. Even if the thing with Jimmy Butler could go further than this at some point, they're not there yet if you're going to drop one of your last 10 games in a hunt for the 6th seed. I mean, listen, the 6th seed seemed almost inconceivable pre-Jimmy Butler, right? They got him. They immediately shot up into 6. They've been fighting for it, and right now they're behind out of it on a tie break. So they need to be better than the Clippers the rest of the way. And I guess what I would say is if you can't do that, there was never anything to believe in at that level in the first place. You know, I think you're still in better position heading forward into future 2 or 3 seasons with Butler than you were without him. So there's good here, and we've seen it. But in terms of ability to really compete this season, you really got to see something kind of special in the next 10 games to believe in that, I think.
Breaking news. This is becoming more and more like the 21-22 season. Kolsky and I, this feels like old times, man, because what happened, I guess that happened during the playoffs, but what happened before the Warriors made their run? Who got injured? Gary Payton.
Oh, no.
Gary Payton, injured. He's out 3 to 6 weeks with a torn ligament in his left thumb. Thoughts on that? Not good. Not great, Bob. Not great, Bob.
Yeah, it's not great. It doesn't add to the feeling that something good could be happening here. But look, I mean, there's plenty of guys to play those minutes if Podziemski and Moody are healthy, right? You'll survive that. Anybody above Gary Payton in the rotation getting injured is probably a bridge too far.
But he's been playing well, and that
he has. I love GP2. This is a bummer. I don't want to understate it, but I also don't want to overstate it. Like, certainly, it doesn't change the modus operandi for these last 10 games, which is like 9-1 isn't even safe, really, for the 6th seed. So that should be the goal at minimum.
All right, if the Warriors want to win an NBA championship, man, it's Jonathan Kuminga, it's Jimmy Butler, it's 2 players that really need to step up scoring, and it's they need to play differently, right? Butler has been everything that we need Kuminga to be, right? Someone that grabs rebounds, that makes things happen away from the ball, that makes things happen without the ball in his hand, and it is also a lot more aggressive, taking the ball to the basket, not settling on threes, and just playing better overall. Whereas Jimmy is the exact opposite. You know, he's been playing that way already. He's been playing very high IQ, strategic basketball, see the floor at all times, know the right play to make. Unfortunately, your assist numbers aren't very high if your team shoots 20-something% from three, which is the case that it was in Miami. He was passing the ball all over the place and no one could knock down anything.
How old
So
is Jimmy Butler?
he's 35 years of age.
Jonathan Kuminga is what, 22?
22 years of age.
Look, man, here's my thing. Has it looked great since he got back? Certainly not.
No.
Have there been moments that show you exactly why they need what he does on the floor? Yes. I thought we were done litigating the fact, and it is a fact, right? No shade. It is a fact that Jonathan Kuminga, at least at present, does not have the basketball IQ that Steve Kerr would like. Fair enough, but I thought we're done with that being a reason to jerk his minutes around and take him out of the game when he's finally having a positive impact. And like,
I don't care how much you play him. I'm fine with playing Jonathan Kuminga the entire game and seeing what he can do. This is a contract year. This is a tryout run for him. Like we're both saying the same things here, but you need more from him in any amount of minutes. You just need more.
But haven't we seen that? Like, is the pattern not well enough established? That, and it's with Moody too, by the way, that the more you put faith in them and give them a consistent run, we got to the point where Jonathan Kuminga was playing 30-plus minutes a night, every night. And what happened?
He was scoring. Was the team winning? You'd have to do that correlation. Does it
to
translate winning basketball?
Was he or was he not playing some of the best basketball of his career? I mean, like, it's just
1,000%.
So do you need a better Kuminga? Yes. What has consistently produced that over his career? More minutes. So
I'm not disagreeing.
You just got to go with it, man. Yeah. I understand it's not perfectly comfortable for Steve Kerr. I understand it might mean you don't do much this year. Is it possible that Jonathan Kuminga is such a mess that he costs you an opportunity at the 6th seed or to win a playoff series? Sure, I guess so. But how far are you really going to go with what we've seen if you don't get something meaningful out of that guy with that level of talent? You just have to. So those minutes are there, man. They are.
The bigger thing is Jimmy Butler. He needs to be someone that on a given night can score 30 when you need 30 from him, or at least get to the free throw line more than, what was it, once?
One free throw attempt. It was not a good, like, never mind who Jimmy Butler is. It just wasn't a good approach to the game from the player, you know? And
that's the thing. It was a good approach, like basketball wise, just not situationally, right? Like the way that he played, he was fine.
But he can't
be fine.
No, and he also can't sell that to me as what he's doing out there, because I know better and I know who he is. I have watched Jimmy Butler. Well, that's the question.
That is the question. He's getting paid like he's still that. We haven't seen it consistently for the Warriors. The first couple of games, the honeymoon phase, which I guess you could say is probably when he's the most motivated, locked in, and ready. Some of those first 5 games were his best scoring games the entire season thus far in his time with the Warriors. So,
and listen, man, he did get guys wide open shots that whole first quarter while they were going down,
and he always will,
double digits. But the thing is, that's, I think, something that
it's all fun and dandy when they're dropping. When they're not,
right.
It's kind of like, all right, guy, we need you to put the ball on the deck and get to the line.
He's just simply has to grab the steering wheel earlier in those situations. Full stop. Otherwise, he is not a $60 million player. You're right.
No doubt about it. All right, injury updates. Gary Payton II. If you're just tuning into us now on the live stream, he is reportedly out 3 to 6 weeks with a torn ligament in his left thumb. So Payton likely heading to the injured list for quite some time, while Steph Curry should be returning here soon. That's a debate. A healthy Curry, rest, 2 games coming up against very bad basketball teams. How much do you rush him back? How much do you weigh how much do you take the gamble of just the other guys step up and knowing that that's kind of what the Warriors need in this situation is the non-Steph Curry players to kind of get in the groove together. And the only way to do that is to go out there against the bad teams and figure this thing out. We're going to talk about that coming up on Locked On Warriors.
Who can stop Steph Curry?
Hopefully we'll never find out.
So that's my big question with Curry right now. You mentioned it on the last show. He's getting plenty of rest because there are so many days between games right now. And I point to that is maybe a reason it part of this slump. I think it's the human nature of just seeing the break, right? When you're in school, you see spring break coming. You see not a lot of traveling that you need to do, whatever it may be. You can be in the same spot for an extended period of time. Maybe the families are in town, whatever it may be. Like there are underlying things that go behind the mind of an NBA player aside from just robot basketball, food, sleep, win, title, rings. Like they're human beings, right? They got things going on. So I do factor that in. At the same time, you're a professional, and as a professional that has title aspirations, look across the conference to the Celtics or across the way to or up the conference to the
Thunder.
Oklahoma City Thunder or to the Cavs or whoever it may be, and whether it's the East or the West, the title contenders that we think are title contenders, they aren't having these 2-game stretches. They're just not. They haven't all season.
I mean, the Cavs sort of did, but it's not just this for the Warriors.
Ignore the facts.
Well, but the difference with the Cavs is that they didn't have a slip basically all season. They just won 15 or 17 in a row or whatever it was. Like the Warriors are not in that position where like you can say those things, right? The things you're saying, long year, middle of March, few nights off, got into spring break mode. These things happen.
You got to be in
was
position.
okay.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
It was okay when you had Kevin Durant and you had more talent than everybody else. Right
this
now,
is real life stuff, man. This is real life stuff. It's like if you're in a sales job or whatever, and the end's coming, the end of the quarter's coming, you've already hit your quota or whatever, you could take your foot off the gas a little bit. If you got your entire quota to make up in 2 weeks and your job's on the line potentially, you better get out there and start knocking on some doors, buddy. Right? It's like this in any field. It's like this in school, man. Like if you got a B in a class going into your last test, and all you need is a C to graduate or whatever, and you don't really care about your GPA, guess what? A D plus gets you by. You don't need to study as much as if you had an F and you need to ace the test. Like this is life. It's not just basketball. We're learning things at the same time, Kolsky. Put yourself in good position, get ahead of the game. The Warriors did not do that. The Cavs did. That's why they can lose 4 in a row a couple weeks back and be in good position. And the Warriors have to switch this thing, and they have to do it right now. Because if they are in the play-in for whatever reason, and they are only going to be in the play-in if they lose games down the stretch and they need to get hot, I just don't think that we can seriously go in to that play-in tournament expecting anything other than a first-round exit.
Yeah, right. I mean, I think, that based on who's in the play-in tournament, you have a sense they'd have a decent shot of getting out of that tournament. But, yeah, can you imagine them beating Denver or the Thunder or the Lakers in a first-round series if this is what it looks like? No, you certainly can't.
This is a good comment on the screen, Kolsky. Kuminga gets so much hate just because his camp wanted the money in the offseason, not because of his playing. And this is true, right? I mean, if he was already signed to Moses Moody's deal and he was playing the way that he's playing, he's a $13 million a year type player, you're not saying as much about it. You see the ceiling, you see the potential in Kuminga, and you consistently want more. And if you're not getting the more now, you can no longer point to he's 22, he's young. This is what, year 4 in the league? Like at some point, Warriors are going to have to make a decision. And per Joe Lacob, it sounds like Kuminga is a part of this future. We'll see. Said the same thing about Jordan Poole. Things happen. This is a business. But if this is the tryout down the stretch, it's time he play his best basketball ASAP if we want to see him for sure playing in a Warriors uniform next season. I don't see how this thing sputters down the stretch. He wants $35 million a year and you oblige. I personally don't. I know you would do it. I personally would just say, you know what? We're good.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't do it if I was him, if this is the way things are going to go, because the whole thing, it is, in my view, look, someone's saying in the chat right now,
he's inconsistent.
He absolutely is. He absolutely is. But
and he's been this way since he's 19.
But he's barely gotten opportunity. And that is the problem. So here's what happens with Kuminga over and over again, and it makes me feel like I'm taking crazy pills, okay? People say, oh, wow, what a talent. We got to see him play. We don't see him play. Oh, man, well, it's been a while. We don't really know what he is. We see him play a tiny bit, and he makes mistakes. He gets benched again for a few games. Ah, God, it's just so hard to tell. Finally, some injury occurs, and he is forced into the lineup for consistent minutes on a regular basis. He gets progressively better over that period of time and looks more and more comfortable, does more and more of the sort of things that Warrior players do and that the coaching staff wants him to do. Then something happens and we start the whole cycle over where he's once again not getting the consistent minutes. And then we say things like, well, he's not 19 anymore. He's 22 now, but he's still being treated like a 19-year-old. And if you compare the amount of minutes that he's gotten compared to the other 19-year-olds who were drafted in that draft, guys who actually were older because he was the youngest kid in the draft, who had more college experience coming in, who had more America experience coming in, he's played less than half the minutes of a lot of those guys. So for me, if I'm Jonathan Kuminga and the message is, oh man, like a couple bad turnovers and you're down to 18 to 23 minutes a game again, it's like, why do I want to be here? They don't like me.
He's never played 18.
They don't like me.
He hasn't played 18. 20. Yeah, 20 is his lowest. He's played 20 a couple times and then 27, 23, 25, 21, 24.
I believe those were 19 and change. Those, I think, and
1955 exactly. But remember, he was on a minutes restriction for probably the first couple of games. They stretched him against Denver because they needed him 27 minutes. So he may still be on this minutes restriction. That's something we don't know. At this point, if you're playing 24, you can go 30. I don't care. It's go time. So right. I get what you're saying there in terms of like give him the keys. What
he
Draymond
was scoring
said,
in the third quarter of the Miami game. He got benched to start the fourth and didn't come back in until it was garbage time. And I just don't understand.
Isn't it fascinating though how Draymond literally said in a presser, like, I'm going to take a seat on the bench. It's Jonathan Kuminga's time. And then as soon as Kuminga gets back from injury, we've completely forgotten about that. Like Kuminga, right. He even said they're not even working up sets for Kuminga. They're like, we're just trying to get him going off the ball. And then when we start running sets for him, it's going to be scary. And now's the time to start running sets for him if you truly believe in him. And maybe Kerr doesn't, and maybe he's not good enough. Like,
well, you don't even have to, is the ridiculousness of it. If you keep him out there and put a little bit of faith in him and give him a little bit of space to make mistakes, what ends up happening is he does all the things you want him to do. He does rebound better. He does make smarter passes. Now, look, there's people in the chat talking about he doesn't see the floor as well as you want him to. That's a fair criticism, but he's not going to get better at that without playing NBA basketball. And look, he's probably never going to be the level of IQ that Steve Kerr wants. Steve Kerr wants Draymond Green. Steve Kerr wants Andre Iguodala, Steph Curry. But those guys, there aren't enough of them to make a complete good enough team to win a title. You've got to be able to accommodate for people who aren't basketball geniuses. Do you understand? Like, I all these criticisms are fair. The argument I make and continue to make is that he consistently improves when he gets regular minutes. And the more they jerk him around, the uglier it all seems to get. So just get in or get out. And if you're going to get out, fair enough. I get it. Like maybe he doesn't fit, but this back and forth is such a waste of everybody's time.
We've been doing it for so long, man. I mean, I remember it was the Lakers series, I believe, that he did not play at all after they take down Sacramento. He had his moments that season. It's his second year in the league. There were some highs, there were some lows. It was very inconsistent. But the question at the end of the year was, why didn't he play against the Lakers? And the argument against it was because he's not good enough. And now we're asking those same questions. Or it's he's not healthy enough and he needs to get his minutes back. But when you're missing Steph Curry and you're missing Gary Payton and your team is sputtering, to say the least, and you're scoring 80 points, you would think the best option is to get arguably your second best scorer, third best scorer on the floor and just ride him until the wheels fall off. And they have not ridden him until the wheels fall off at all during this stretch. You're right about that. I can give you that. The counter argument would be Steve Kerr knows more about basketball than everyone, and maybe he just thinks he's not good enough. I don't know. And has Kerr been wrong before? Many times, but he is heading to the Hall of Fame.
We were playing Anthony Lamb over the guy at one point, and people defended that. You know what I mean? So, like,
I agree. I mean, he was 19 at the time.
These are not viable arguments because we've seen it. We've seen what a positive impact he can have when he's playing well. He is not incapable of fitting into what the Warriors do, despite his lack of experience and lack of rope that he has been given. This is not unique to Jonathan Kuminga, right? It is unfortunate that we're still asking this question down the stretch of a potential playoff push. Of course it is. But the reason we are still asking it then is because Steve Kerr refused to entertain it so many times over the last 3 or 4 years. And again, that's an argument I have consistently made. If he had given him some minutes against Charlotte in December consistently 2 years ago, when we first started to see the way he could positively impact this team, everyone now I'm getting exercised. And maybe there's no reason to do that. But at the end of the day, like, where's this team going if they don't get value out of Jonathan Kuminga? Nowhere. And that includes next year. So whether that means getting some value out of his empty spot when you move him in some way or let him go, or if that means getting value out of him as a player, this team is not good enough without another very good player. And the only candidate right now is Jonathan Kuminga.
The proof is in the pudding, people. There's two very important parts of his splits. I'm a big splits guy. His minutes were up over 30 the entire month of December. The only time this season that he started games, the only time this season that he played more than 30 minutes, it was his best month. He averaged 21, averaged 6 rebounds, averaged a couple of assists, was an extremely effective offensive and defensive player during that time, was shooting at 46% for the floor, 35% from deep. He was getting to the free throw line, wasn't turning it over as much as he was in other months with more minutes. But the Warriors weren't winning. The Warriors weren't winning. And that's the counter argument that people make.
Yeah, but but like, it's not like I'm saying bench Jimmy Butler and give Kuminga all his minutes. Guy Santos, and I love Guy, but like, he can't affect the game like Kuminga can.
You were just winning a lot of games with Guy, though, getting the people up gladiator style. And maybe Kerr looks into that too much, where he's just so analytically driven, where he's like, hey, this guy can give us 30 points. He can look like an all-star at times. But
if he's analytically driven, he should be looking at the stats you just read, not wins and losses, which analytics doesn't even really deal with in a meaningful way.
Amen. And that's the $1 million question of why he doesn't get the minutes. And when he does get the minutes, it's pretty similar with Moody. It's dropped off a little bit since he's gotten consistent 30-plus minutes games. But the argument always was, look at their splits when they play more than 25. Look at their splits when they play less than 25. And that's going to be the question moving forward because Peyton's out. They're going to need Jonathan Kuminga. He's going to start playing more than 25 minutes every single game moving forward. You can bet your ass that. He's just getting back, man. He's just getting back.
Okay. All right. I hope you're right.
He was out for forever with an ankle injury. Like they're nursing him back into it. And 25 minutes is nothing to slouch at.
It's been a couple weeks since he came back, and the whole point of keeping him out forever was so he was ready to go. And listen, I hope you're right, but never at any point has it been safe to say that you bet your ass that Jonathan Kuminga will get consistent minutes moving forward. Never.
When they said it was his time, and you got to remember, Kerr, what, 2 weeks ago said that he's working Kuminga back in slowly. He warned us of this. He said, like, hey, don't expect too much of Jonathan out of the gate. Draymond backs it up, and he's like, we're letting him ease into this thing and figure out his role with Jimmy. Like, don't panic.
How does benching him when he is playing well in a game where you desperately need offense
I'm not disagreeing
into that?
I'm not disagreeing with you, man. I am not disagreeing with you, to say the least. I'm just trying to weigh all the things in my head. It's been confusing. It's been a confusing last few years.
It's just confusing. I'm not arguing with Steve Kerr's Hall of Fame candidacy. This is just an issue that I feel like he has a blind spot on, and it frustrates me.
Yeah. Amen, man. Amen. Pelicans on Friday. You have to win that basketball game. It's as simple as that. Just win. We'll worry about the rest. Warriors neck and neck with the Los Angeles Clippers. Could go down until the last game of the season to see if the Warriors are in the postseason. That's all I got for you. I want to show you this cool hat that I got on the way out. It doesn't pair well with any outfit ever, but I found a Seattle Supersonics hat from the store lids. So we'll throw this one into the collection.
It's a classic hat, man.
It is. So bring back the Sonics, say that the people in Seattle. Kolsky, good stuff. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. And now get back to work. It's Thursday.
Wins. Just win, baby.